Have you ever noticed how the loudest person in the room rarely holds the most power? True presence isn't built from noise, it's forged in silence. The Stoics understood this long before us. The person who speaks less but means every word, commands attention without asking for it. When you stop chasing validation, when you stop talking just to fill the void, something shifts. Your silence becomes your strength. Your calm becomes your confidence. And suddenly, the world leans in, not because you're performing, but because you're real. This isn't about learning to speak better. It's about learning to listen, to pause, to master yourself before your words ever leave your lips. Because when you do, every sentence becomes a reflection of peace, and every silence becomes unforgettable. There was a time when I thought the louder I spoke, the more people would listen. I tried to fill every silence, to keep conversations alive, to prove I belonged in every room. I thought being interesting meant being heard. But the truth hit me one evening at a dinner I can't forget. I was surrounded by people who seemed to glow effortlessly, those magnetic types who never had to compete for attention. I was talking, trying to contribute, explaining something I thought was insightful, when I noticed something that shook me. No one was really listening. Their eyes had already shifted toward another man at the table. He hadn't said a word yet, but when he did, just a few quiet, simple words, the whole room leaned in. It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. His words had weight. That moment burned into me. I realized that I had been mistaking noise for presence, sound for strength, and confidence for connection. I was performing, trying to prove my value through volume. And in doing so, I lost the very thing that gives a person gravity: silence. Because real presence doesn't announce itself, it simply exists. The people who hold attention don't chase it. They don't rush to fill the air. They let others feel their calm before they ever hear their voice. After that night, I began to notice a pattern. The most respected people rarely interrupt. They speak after thinking. Their pauses make people nervous, not because they're uncertain, but because their stillness feels deliberate. There's a kind of power that doesn't need to prove itself. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's still. You can't fake it, you can't script it. You can only earn it by mastering yourself. For years, I believed influence came from articulation, from having the right words, stories, and timing. But now I see it comes from alignment, when your words match your intent, when your tone mirrors your peace, when you mean exactly what you say and nothing more. That kind of presence can't be taught through performance. It's built in silence, in solitude, in the moments when you learn to be comfortable, not being the loudest voice in the room. Silence is misunderstood. People think it's weakness. They fill every gap out of fear of judgment, fear of being forgotten, fear of seeming uninteresting. But silence isn't absence, it's depth. It's the space where respect is built. Because when you stop performing and start being present, people stop hearing your words and start feeling your essence. That's why today, I want to take you on a different kind of journey, not one about talking more, but about meaning more. I want to show you the Stoic art of speaking less, of mastering conversation not through dominance, but through presence. Because when you stop chasing attention, something incredible happens. People start giving it to you willingly. If you've ever felt invisible in a room full of voices, if you've ever wondered why some people are effortlessly heard while others fade into the background, stay until the end of this video. What I'm about to share isn't about tricks, tactics, or social skills. It's about truth. It's about learning how to let your calm speak louder than your words. And if this message already resonates with you, if you've ever wanted to speak with more confidence, clarity, and presence, then take a second to subscribe. It's a small action for you, but it fuels this channel to keep creating content that helps you master not just communication, but yourself. Now let me ask you something. When someone ignores your words, what do you do? A. Speak louder to be heard. B. Grow quieter to be understood. Comment A or B below, and let's see how many of you are ready to choose presence over performance. After that night, something inside me shifted. I began watching conversations differently, noticing the rhythm, the way people spoke over each other, how everyone was waiting for their turn to talk instead of truly listening. It was like I could suddenly see the invisible current that ran beneath every exchange. Ego. Everyone wanted to be heard, but no one wanted to hear, including me. I had spent years chasing validation disguised as dialogue, mistaking attention for connection. And the more I chased it, the emptier it felt. I remember one afternoon at a cafe. I was sitting across from a friend who had been going through a difficult breakup. I was ready with advice, with solutions, with stories about my own experiences that I thought would comfort him. But before I could start, he looked at me with tired eyes and said, "I don't need answers. I just need someone to listen." Those words cut through me like truth always does, sharp, simple, undeniable. So I shut up. I let him speak. For the first time in a long time, I didn't prepare my next sentence. I didn't think about what I'd say when he finished. I just listened. And when he was done, he exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath for years. That silence between us was more healing than any advice I could have given. That day, I understood something the Stoics had been trying to teach for centuries. Listening isn't passive. It's an act of strength. It's control. It's the ability to quiet your own need for attention long enough to truly see someone else. Epictetus was right. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listening twice as much as we speak doesn't make us smaller. It makes us aware. It grounds us. When you learn to listen, you start to notice things others miss: the hesitation in a voice, the flicker of fear behind a laugh, the truth someone hides behind their words. You become attuned to the unspoken, and people feel that. They feel seen, and in a world built on noise, being seen is the rarest gift. But most people don't know how to give it. We're conditioned to perform, to fill silence, to fix, to compare. You mention your struggle, and someone immediately turns it into theirs. You share a victory, and they try to outdo it. Every moment becomes a tug of war for significance. I used to do that too. Every story I told, every comment I made, had a secret purpose to remind people I mattered. But that's the paradox. The harder you try to matter, the less you do. The people who matter most never need to prove it. After that cafe moment, I started experimenting. Instead of trying to impress, I started asking, "Tell me more about that." Then I stopped talking. I listened not to reply, but to understand. The results were immediate. People opened up in ways they never had before. They told me things they'd hidden for years. They smiled differently, softer. They left the conversation feeling lighter, not because I said something profound, but because I didn't interrupt what was already trying to surface. That's when I realized that deep listening is a form of love. Not romantic love, but human love, the kind that says, "You exist, and I'm here with you." It's what everyone is searching for, but few ever find. And the strange thing is, when you stop trying to be interesting and start being interested, people remember you. Not for your charm, but for your presence. They walk away thinking, "I felt seen." That's what makes them come back. Not because you entertained them, but because, for a moment, you reminded them they mattered. In time, I noticed something else. When you practice real listening, your own voice changes. You stop speaking to fill the void. You speak because you have something worth saying. Your words slow down, your tone deepens, and your presence grows. You stop talking from your mouth and start talking from your center. That's when people start leaning in, not because you're loud, but because you're real. Listening is rare, presence is rarer. But the combination of both? That's power. Not the kind that dominates or controls, but the kind that heals. The kind that leaves a mark long after you've walked away. So I started making that my quiet mission, to listen deeply, to speak slowly, and to never rush connection. Because in a world that's constantly shouting, the person who listens becomes unforgettable. The more I practiced listening, the more I realized how much of my life had been built on pretending. Pretending to know, pretending to understand, pretending to have all the answers. It's strange how afraid we are to say 3 simple words. I don't know. We'll twist our sentences, fake certainty, and drown in empty explanations just to avoid those words. For years, I was that person. I couldn't stand the idea of being seen as uncertain. So I spoke with false confidence, smiled through confusion, and hoped no one noticed. But they always did. People can smell insecurity disguised as intelligence. I remember the moment I stopped pretending. It was during a team meeting at work. Someone asked me a technical question I didn't have the answer to. Normally, I would have bluffed my way through it, said something vague to buy time. But that day, I heard myself say it before I could think. I don't know. The room went quiet. I felt the weight of the silence, expecting judgment, disappointment, maybe even laughter. But none of that came. Instead, someone nodded and said, "Thanks for being honest. Let's figure it out together." That response stayed with me. It wasn't just relief, it was revelation. I realized that honesty, even when uncomfortable, builds more respect than performance ever could. People don't need you to know everything. They just need to know that when you speak, you mean it. And for the first time, I understood what Socrates meant when he said, "I know that I know nothing." It wasn't self-deprecation, it was liberation. Admitting what you don't know frees you from the exhausting prison of pretense. From that day forward, I started noticing how different real confidence feels. It doesn't shout, it doesn't rush to answer, it pauses. It admits, it learns. When you're no longer obsessed with appearing smart, you finally start becoming wise. There's a strange peace that comes with not knowing, because when you stop pretending, you make space for truth. You start listening again, not just to others, but to yourself. You stop fearing gaps in knowledge because you understand that curiosity is not a weakness. It's the doorway to growth. I saw how powerful this was outside of work too. One evening, a friend asked me about a topic I barely understood. Instead of pretending, I just said, "I don't know." And I smiled not nervously, but calmly. To my surprise, that answer didn't kill the conversation, it deepened it. He started sharing what he knew, and by the end, we both left smarter. That's the paradox of humility. When you stop acting like you know everything, people actually start listening to you more. Because your words now carry integrity. Socrates was right, knowledge begins where arrogance ends. The most dangerous kind of ignorance isn't not knowing, it's thinking you do. Once you understand that, every "I don't know" becomes an invitation to learn, not a confession of weakness. It's a sign that you value truth more than image. And in a world addicted to image, that's a rare kind of power. Looking back, I think what people crave most isn't expertise, it's honesty. They don't remember those who spoke the most, but those who spoke with truth. And truth, even in its simplest form, commands attention. So now, when I speak, I don't aim to sound clever. I aim to sound real. Because realness is magnetic. And sometimes, the most intelligent thing you can say is the one that humbles you. I don't know. There's something strange that happens when you stop pretending to know everything. Life starts teaching you quietly. You begin to see how much wisdom hides in silence. For years, I feared silence. It made me uncomfortable, like something needed to be filled. I thought good conversations were like tennis matches, fast, constant, lively. But I was wrong. The most meaningful moments I've ever had were built not on words, but on the space between them. I learned this the hard way. I was in a heated argument once, the kind that spirals fast, where voices rise and logic disappears. I could feel my chest tighten, my thoughts racing ahead of my words, desperate to win. But something stopped me. I remembered a Stoic line I'd read, Silence is a lesson learned through many sufferings. So I said nothing. I just looked at the person across from me and stayed still. The silence stretched uncomfortably, and for a moment, it felt unbearable. Then something unexpected happened. The energy shifted. The other person's tone softened. Their anger lost its rhythm. And for the first time, we could actually talk, not argue. That's when I realized silence isn't passive, it's control. It's the space where clarity lives. People think silence is weakness because they've never mastered it. They use words as shields, as noise to hide behind. But the man who can stay calm in the storm, the one who doesn't rush to defend or prove himself, he owns the moment. His silence becomes louder than words. The Stoics knew this. They believed that restraint was strength in disguise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." That's what silence teaches you, to hold your reaction until it's refined enough to serve peace, not pride. When you learn to pause before speaking, your words start carrying weight. You stop reacting to emotion and start responding from wisdom. Every pause becomes a small act of mastery. But silence isn't just about discipline. It's also about empathy. I've seen how quiet presence can comfort people more than any speech. When someone is grieving, they don't need advice. They need stillness beside them, a calm reminder that they're not alone. That's the kind of silence that heals. It doesn't fix the pain. It absorbs it. The same is true for boundaries. Saying nothing can be more powerful than explaining yourself. When you stop over-explaining, when you let your absence speak for itself, people begin to understand what your presence once meant. Every time you say no without guilt, every time you choose not to respond to provocation, you reinforce your worth without saying a word. The world tests your peace daily, but you don't need to fight every battle. Some victories happen in quiet exits. I used to believe strength was visible, that power was something you could see, feel, or hear. Now I know it's the opposite. The strongest people I've met are calm. They don't rush to prove their point. They don't need to be right to feel powerful. Their peace is their proof. They move through chaos untouched because they've learned that silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the presence of control. That's what I want to master, not the art of speaking, but the discipline of restraint. Because words are easy, anyone can talk, but silence? Silence is earned. It's the mark of someone who has faced themselves, tamed their ego, and chosen peace over pride. And in that stillness, you find something no argument, no explanation, no noise can ever give you clarity. The more I practiced silence, the more I began to understand that restraint was not just a tool, it was a mirror. It showed me everything I had been running from, my need to be liked, to be understood, to be noticed. When I stopped filling the air with explanations, something profound happened. I could finally hear myself. And what I heard was uncomfortable, a mind addicted to noise, to reassurance, to reaction. I realized I had spent years speaking just to feel safe. But the truth is, you only find safety when you no longer need to explain who you are. That understanding changed everything. I stopped rushing to answer messages. I stopped forcing conversations. I stopped justifying my boundaries to people who had already crossed them. At first, it felt lonely, like walking through a city after the crowd has gone home. But slowly, the silence that once felt heavy started to feel like home. I began to see how much of my peace I had traded away in the name of being available. And when I started saying no without guilt, the world reacted. Some people respected it, others disappeared. Both outcomes were gifts. There's a strange shift that happens when you stop living for reaction. You start to live for direction. You no longer chase validation. You chase alignment. You no longer ask, do they like me? But instead, does this serve me? That's not selfishness, it's self-respect. And the more I chose silence over justification, the stronger that respect grew. People who once took advantage of my energy began to feel the distance. They didn't understand that the quiet wasn't anger, it was healing. I wasn't pulling away to punish them. I was returning to myself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That line became my compass. I began to measure my words against truth and my actions against peace. If something didn't align with either, I let it fall away. I realized that clarity doesn't come from talking. It comes from listening to what your silence reveals. When you stop trying to be everywhere, you finally understand where you belong. And here's the paradox. The quieter I became, the louder my presence grew. People started noticing, not because I tried to be seen, but because stillness is rare in a world addicted to noise. Silence huddles people. It forces them to face themselves. Some find that uncomfortable, others find it magnetic. But either way, it's powerful. Because when you no longer need to prove your worth, you become undeniable. Now I understand that the real art of communication isn't about perfect timing or eloquent phrasing. It's about alignment between who you are and what you say. Speak only when your words carry integrity. Be silent when they don't, because silence doesn't mean withdrawal. It means mastery. It's choosing not to waste your truth on those who don't value it. So if you've made it this far, I want you to try something radical. For the next 24 hours, speak less. Listen more. Notice how much peace exists when you stop reacting. Watch how your energy shifts when you protect it instead of spending it. And when you do speak, let your words be clean, free from fear, from approval, from noise. This is the Stoic way, not loud, not performative, but unshakably calm. If that's the life you want to build, one rooted in clarity and self-respect, subscribe to this channel. Because here, we don't just talk about strength, we practice it. One word, one silence, one choice at a time.